Welcome back. It is the day after we finished on the potato harvest. So next thing on the agenda is I'm going to get all my late melons, my sweet potato fields, and my late purple hulls all plowed up, disc up. And then we're getting ready to plant cover crops on those. I've already planted the cover crops on a few other fields. I planted the field where we had plastic mulch and some of our earlier purple hulls. So those cover crops will be maybe about 2 weeks ahead of these. My goal was to get them all finished by October 1st. I'm going to be a little bit after that, but not too much. That rain that I talked about that delayed us a few days on the potato harvest kind of messed up my schedule a little, but it'll be fine. We planted Elbon rye and Austrian winter peas, like a 75 to 25% ratio. So it's coming up pretty good on my earlier spot that I planted, and of course I'll show you that and keep you updated throughout the winter as it's growing. But this is something new for me. I've never planted cover crops, partly because we have different things growing in the winter like the cabbage and the greens and that kind of stuff, but I'm gonna plant it on everything that has bare ground and just try it and see what kind of benefit I get. I do a lot of tillage, so I want to try to build up my organic matter, and so we'll see how it goes. There's certainly some benefits to it. In our area, a lot of people are really doing more and more of it every year. So once I get through here, we will spread it, broadcast the seed. So that'll be the next thing, and I'll show you when we do that. Pretty much all my ground that I farm is pretty sandy too, so you know that cover crop will help with just the sand washing. Even though all the fields are mostly flat and graded, I still have some runoff, or I don't know that you really call it erosion, but anyway, that's another benefit of the cover crops, as well as just having like the legumes. The Austrian winter peas are a legume, so that'll give me some nitrogen fixation build up in the soil. So anyway, we're gonna try it and see. Okay, I'm gonna give you an update on the greens. We've got mustards, if you remember from my earlier video, mustard greens, turnip greens, and collard greens. About 3/4 of the field is mustards. The other 1/4 is divided into collards and turnips. And today is Monday, October the 2nd. We're gonna start letting people pick on Tuesday, October the 3rd. So I thought I'd kind of show you what they look like. They will still get bigger, but we're going to go ahead and let people start, which is pretty much normal time for us. Once people start thinning them out too, they'll continue to grow, but they'll grow either way a little bit more. Okay, these are the mustard greens. Just the Florida broadleaf is the variety. I'll leave these drive rows. I've got several drive rows right here for people to drive down out through the field and park and get out. There's 3 or 4 of those, and then they can drive around the edge or park on the end too, either way. These are the turnips. It'll take a little while for the turnip bottoms to get big, but people like the tops too just as well. And then over here are my collards. Everything looks pretty good, clean. We've hoed them a few times. I've cultivated them a couple of times. sprayed them for insecticide a couple of times. So we need some dry weather in October. That'll keep the people out here every day picking. And like I've said in my earlier videos, from now till Thanksgiving is peak time on the greens. We'll leave it open until New Year's, but sometimes the weather's not the greatest and it gets colder then, but the majority of them will be picked between now and Thanksgiving. Okay, now we've got the spreader buggy and we're slinging out the cover crop seed. And then I'm gonna come back and cover it up. I'm gonna show you what the seed looks like. All right, that's the Elbon rye with the Austrian winter peas. The peas are the little round seed. Then the rye is everything else. You can see it's scattered. We ended up having to wait on the seed from my supplier. So after we disc everything up, it rained on it. So we had to wait about a week. So now we're doing this today. Then I'll come back immediately later today and we'll cover everything up with the field cultivator. So my second round of cover crop planting, which is this, will end up being about 3 weeks or more behind my other. My other is really taking off and growing fast now. I'll show you that soon. The buggy that we're using is the same buggies that we use when we're spreading fertilizer. So it'll spread that seed the same way. Now we're headed back to the field with my field cultivator. And we're going to cover up the seed, not too deep, just enough to cover it up, and then we'll be done with that. May have to have a rain to get it up. It just depends on the seed to soil contact after you cover it up. What I planted the first time really didn't come up good until it rained. Alright, you can see we're running with the field cultivator. Even though there's plenty of moisture in the ground, it'll be kind of fluffy on top where that seed is, and it may not germinate all the way until it rains, like I mentioned a second ago. So either way, it'll come up at some point. I spent most of the day down here and I got it all finished. So everything spread, all the seeds spread, everything's covered up. And that'll be pretty much most of the tillage that I will do for the rest of the year. I may plow the cabbage a few times, but other than that, that's probably about it. So I'm anxious to see if I get much benefit out of the cover crops. It may take a couple of years, and it may be hard to tell, you know, if I'm directly getting the benefit, but anyway, something that I've wanted to try for a few years, so we'll see what happens, and I'll keep y'all informed and show you the growth on all of it through the winter. We give the potatoes a bath. What we do is we wash them the day before we box them. And then after they sit outside all day, then we'll put them in front of the fan overnight. Those will be the ones that we box that next day. You know, when you're washing them this way, it washes obviously the ones on the top and kind of around the edges. Sometimes it doesn't get the ones down in the middle, but we hand wipe them if they need to be hand wiped, and so it gets most of them pretty clean. Okay, here's where we set them up. In my shop, got a fan on each end, and then after they sit outside most of the day, they'll come in here overnight, and we'll box the next morning and they'll be dry. See, we're taking the lids and put them underneath the boxes so they don't blow off. This guy's going to resell. Nice, pretty load of potatoes though. Here's an example of one of those cardboard bins that I showed you on the last video when we were harvesting. You know, these are bulk potatoes. Still got the dirt on them. We just sit them in the back of these guys' trucks and they take them home. And we box all the potatoes in these 25-pound boxes. We call them tomato boxes primarily because that's what they always have written on them, but you know, we use them for tomatoes, peaches, squash, peppers, cucumbers, eggplant, all that in the summer, and then we use them for sweet potatoes in the fall. All right, we use the tomato boxes on the sweet potatoes for a couple different reasons. The first one is we use this same box pretty much for everything. So if we have boxes left over from the summer, then we can go straight into the sweet potatoes. If we have boxes left over after sweet potato season's over, then we save them and go straight into the summer. So that way we don't have different size boxes. You know, I'm probably the only sweet potato grower that you'll ever see hardly that'll pack them in tomato boxes and not the standard 40-pound sweet potato box. Well, those 40-pound boxes are heavy, and we have ladies that help me box them up, and we also have a lot of elderly people that come buy potatoes, and it's just easier for them to handle. The tomato box, when it's full of tomatoes, will be about 25 pounds. When it's full of sweet potatoes, it'll be about 30. So that's a 30-pound box versus a 40-pound box, and it's just easier to handle and move around, and so that's the two reasons why we do it. Okay, this is what we call a small number one. We divide our number one grade into two different sizes, and it's just kind of eyeballed. We don't use any kind of sizer. About half the people want them on the smaller side, and about half the people want them on the bigger side, so we separate them. So if you go by my hand, you know, they're not really small, but just for our benefit of distinguishing between the two, we just call them a small number one. Okay, the large number one, just a little bit maybe longer, just a little bit fatter. Not a huge difference. Maybe a little hard to tell on video, but once again, we eyeball them, so it's not perfectly sized, but that kind of gives you an idea. Those are our two different grades of number one. This size is a jumbo. They come in all shapes and sizes. You can tell by my hand here that that's too big of a potato to put in the microwave or the oven and bake. People use these when they're cutting up. Sweet potato pies is probably the number one thing that people will make from the jumbos. We sell more of these around the holidays. When people are cutting them up or peeling them, it's just easier to use jumbos. You know, you don't have to peel as many. Last size is what we call a number two cull. These are all shapes and sizes. Most of these potatoes were connected on the vine to several, two or three bigger potatoes whenever we picked them up out of the ground and put them in our bins when we were harvesting them. So that's how most of these potatoes get in the bins. But we sell a lot of them. I mean, believe it or not, people like these little ones. So those are our four different grades. This is our station right here. We just bring one bin at a time and box it. They've got the lids on top. They haven't started yet for the day, but they'll have their four different grades right here, and then we'll box them and put them on the pallets. So it's pretty simple, nothing too fancy. We do sell to people that resell. I showed you that earlier with the guy that had them on the trailer. But probably the majority of them just go out to individuals. We're the only sweet potato grower in a very big radius circle from where we are. So we get a lot of people just coming to get, you know, 1, 2, 5 boxes at a time for their family. It works so well with the you pick greens. People will stop and get potatoes, then go pick greens. So it really benefits us to have good dry weather in October and November. My goal every year is to try to sell all the potatoes before Thanksgiving. And I would say probably 8 out of 10 times that usually happens. And once again, it usually depends on the weather, because the rain will keep people away. So we're about halfway through boxing. I think by tomorrow is the 21st of October. And I think we should be exactly halfway through boxing. So we're on schedule to finish before Thanksgiving. So hopefully we'll sell them right after we get finished up boxing and be done. That's my goal. Okay, here's some of my earliest cover crops. This is on the plastic field. You can see this is the rye right here. And here's right there between my fingers is some of those winter peas. This is Probably about 4 weeks old here. Just really only had a good rain kind of right in the middle. But it's coming along. All right, this is some of my younger cover crop that you saw me planting on the tractor. It's nice and green. It really hadn't had really any rain. I really thought it would take a rain to get it up, but most of it came up, although some of it still may come up whenever it does rain. Okay, before we go and wrap up the video, I'm gonna show you an update on the cabbage. Remember, we planted the cabbage about the 10th of August, and it was way too hot, and about 95 or more % of them died. So we had to replant, and so that made them later than normal by the time I got around to replanting them. So I've got cabbage of all different sizes, which is not normal for me. Hopefully we'll make a cabbage crop, but there's, you'll have a couple of big ones, and then you'll have a small one and middle-sized ones, and they're just kind of all over the place. Normally I have them on drip irrigation, and every plant is exactly the same height. They're all completely uniform. So I'm probably going to go back next year to putting them back on drip. I wanted to try it this year on bare ground just to see how they would do. We're the 23rd of October. I like to have them ready before Thanksgiving. Some of them will be, but a lot of them won't. This is a little head right here, about that big. It'll be ready before Thanksgiving. It was one of the few plants that survived, from that first planting. If they had all survived, they'd look like that, and that'd be great. But then we got a lot of them like this that are just now starting to wrap, and a lot smaller. So the temperatures will probably determine how the cabbage does. If they don't get frozen solid, I guess they will all make eventually. That's a trash bag right there, by the way, in case somebody was wondering what that was. It blew out into the field. So this is kind of going to be a trial and error on the cabbage. Normally, when they're all the same height, you just start on the edge of the field and start harvesting and move across. Well, we're going to have to do lots of skipping around, which is okay, but it's not ideal. Here's another one that's starting to form a head. So we'll have some cabbage. I just don't know if we'll have near as many as we normally do, just because there's so much variation. But that's the cabbage update. On the next video, hopefully we'll maybe have some to harvest to show you. I'm probably going to wrap up the video right there. If you notice, my voice may sound a little bit different. I've been battling a cold for a few days, so excuse me for that. But hopefully y'all kind of got an idea on this video of how we box up the potatoes and how we plant the cover crops and how the greens work and all that kind of stuff. So that's, pretty much what we do in the month of October. So I appreciate y'all watching. Subscribe to us. Give us a thumbs up if you want to, and we'll see y'all next time.